My aim for this project was to modify a Mamod SR1a to gear down the whole mechanism so that it travelled at a more realistic speed. The aim was to try and modify it without doing too much to the steam engine itself, so that if it didn't work too well I could just modify it back again. The only thing you have to do to modify it back is remove the two rivets. These rivets go in exactly the same holes as the original rivets, which I had to remove to put on this bracket, and just spin this around, undo the grub screw, and turn the flywheel around so that the slot was on the inside rather than the outside. Now, the bits I needed for the bracket, I managed to get hold of, it's called an internal post bracket. This says 65 by 65, and these are actually from the Bunnings warehouse in Australia, but anything equivalent would do. The thickness is good. I think it's about 2.5 millimeters, and it's galvanized, so it should be long lasting. And of course it's cut to that width. I can't remember what it was, about 20 mil, and it's the height's been reduced slightly as well, where it just curved around at the top. Now, the width is just right, because if you grab a hex bolt and with a hex head on it, and this one is a 3/16 inch diameter bolt. The length is just under 90 millimeters, and the thread is in a good position so that when it's across this bracket, the bearing point is just inside the thread, so it won't wear away at the bracket. Okay, now for the wheel itself, I'll just turn this around. It's made up of two parts. It's the larger gear, and the inner smaller gear. The outer one was just made up from some about 6 millimeter thick aluminium, and this one is about 60 millimeters wide, and just cut out a circular piece as close as you can, just marking where the center is. Then I just put it on a normal drill, fixed the drill in position so it wouldn't move, and then used a file and sandpaper to get it perfectly round, bit like using a lathe, because I didn't have a lathe, so it was the next best thing. Then for the slot, same sort of thing, just had this mounted in a normal drill, and then got a hacksaw blade and rested it on a piece of wood, and just cut the center slot just deep enough for the belt to fit in. Then the inner piece was actually, I had this from a radio controlled engine mount actually. You'd probably be able to do something similar just from a bit of aluminium tubing, and then drill a hole through the center, but this was already drilled through, and I had to cut the length off slightly, so you can sort of experiment so it lines up with the slot on the wheel to get the right width. And then both those pieces are fitted together simply by having this go through the flywheel, this disc, and into the other gear, and then there's a nut on the inside there and an acorn nut on the outside, and that just clamps them together, and there's one washer in between there just to so there's, you know, just gets the right amount of play if necessary, and that's pretty much it. Then just painted the whole thing. This is this bracket here is actually painted with car caliper paint, which you bake in the oven, and it's heat resistant. It's quite easy to apply. Just spray it on and chuck it in the oven. So I'll give a quick demo of it and see how we go. A couple of other things I didn't mention as it's coming up to steam. That's the original drive belt that came with it, so it's been untouched. The other one I had to get a second one and just cut a slightly shorter so that you can buy these readily from Mamod. I can't remember how much they cost, but not very expensive, and then just cut it to length and then join it quite easily as per the instructions. The other thing, this bracket I showed you earlier has 65 by 65 written on it, but the internal diameter is actually about 55 millimeters, and the width of this part here is about 13 or 14 millimeters. Oops. 13 millimeters. Right, so I'll just let her come up to steam and see how she runs.